Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. One of the things we talk about all the time is when it comes to drafting well, it takes more than just knowing talent to draft well. There are plenty of talented football players that don't work out. Plenty of guys who you watch the tape and you go, oh, this dude can play in the league. And for whatever reason, whether it be maturity, whether it be the situation wasn't a good fit for him, whether it be for off the field reasons that are significant, talented players don't make it sometimes, right? If you're an NFL team, you have to create an incubator for success for the players that you bring in. This is common knowledge, right? Can't just expect, I'm just going to close my eyes, throw darts at the board, randomly select guys, and then because these guys are talented, they're going to be good. Now, this is a bit of a spectrum. Sometimes people go way too hard in one spectrum of this and way too hard in the other, right? I don't love it when people think that the only thing that matters is the situation. We talked about this with quarterback where it's like, oh, well, you know, if the Browns draft somebody, they should be able to force that into a good pick. That's not how it happens, right? Like the talent needs to be there. The ability to make the throws and everything else needs to be there. But also, you can't just throw a very talented player into a garbage situation and expect great results. You know, maybe if that player's generational, you get something out of it, but you know, you could end up really disrupting that player's growth because you didn't put them in an incubator for success. The reason I'm talking about this right now is I was watching the New Heights podcast, and Joe Thomas was on. I don't think this is a new episode. I think this happened before the draft. And Joe was talking about what he did at the end of his career with Myles Garrett. And then Travis Kelce chimed in with something that really made me think. So I'm going to play the whole clip. It's going to be a long clip. Hopefully the New Heights podcast is not content strike me for it. But here's the clip.
And the one benefit I would say for me is it was Myles Garrett's rookie year. So I was able to really spend a lot of time with Myles and help him see the game from an offensive tackle's perspective, right? So
damn you, Joe. Damn you, Joe.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Yeah. I wasn't going to do that until I was definitely out of the league. Yeah. But yeah, I would write him scouting reports and I would give him like, hey, okay, this is what this guy's good at. This is what he's not good at. This is the rush I think you should feature. But don't do it at the beginning of the game. Set him up first 2 quarters. And then in the second half, when the game's on the line, now you pull out your best stuff. And then you give him what you've been giving him. And then you'll probably beat him. And then, you know, it turns out he's also a really ridiculously fucking good athlete. So he can kind of do whatever I ask him to do.
He can just do whatever. Really just go out there and have fun, Myles.
Yeah, go get him.
Freaking, he's like a scorpion, a girl. Like it's unreal.
To that point, though, it's fascinating how much guys come into the league and they don't necessarily understand what guys on the other side of the ball are being taught. It's one thing to understand what coverage they're in, what front they're in, but it's a whole nother level of preparation to understand how you're being defended in routes, how this guy is going to use his hands or use his moves throughout the day in terms of pass rush. And that 100% took my game to the next level. Asking guys like Eric Berry about coverages, about his leverages, asking DBs, you know, what are you thinking in this sort of coverage? You know, going up to a guy like Spags, the defensive coordinator in KC, and asking him, you know, later in the game, what are you thinking in big time situations? It's just you ask the right questions to the right guys, and you're gonna see yourself progress down the line. And Myles had a fucking Hall of Famer sitting right there telling him what they. I mean, that's a fucking cheat code in itself. Let alone how athletic that dude is, man.
Yeah, man.
That made me think about 2 players in particular that this could be beneficial for. Now, just because an incubator for success is there, just because the right people are there to help you be successful, does not always guarantee success. So do not confuse me saying that, hey, there's some stuff here that I think these players can take advantage of that is going to be helpful for them with me saying these guys are going to be good no matter what, because that's simply not the case. The NFL is a crapshoot. Projecting to the NFL is hard to do. Mason Graham obviously has a really good chance to translate to it, but there are other things that could pop up that could disrupt the NFL career. Anyways, back to the main point. It made me think of 3 players, really 2. Mason Graham, Shador Sanders, to a lesser extent, Dillon Gabriel. As people who can really benefit from the veterans the Browns have on the opposite side of some of their weaknesses. Mason Graham, I think it's obvious to see how he's going to benefit from having Joe Bitonio across from him, right? Because now he gets to understand the game from an elite guard's perspective. And Joe gets to kind of put him not under his wing, but be a good reference point for him when he's wondering, like, hey, what is going to work in the league? What do guards not want me to do? What do interior offensive linemen really not want to see when they're in certain protections? How can I identify these protections and take advantage of them? Mason's already a pretty cerebral player, so I'm pretty sure some of this is already in his tool belt, but working with Joe Bitonio could be something that can make this even more of a skill or even a sharper tool in his tool belt, right? And then with some of the weaknesses with Mason, right? Like, okay, he needs to get a little bit more powerful, but knowing where to be with your angles and where to put your hands in. When exactly do you want to use power, right? Joe Thomas made this point with Miles, like, hey, you don't want to use all that shit early on. You want to hit them in the second half, right? Understanding the flow of the game. When are moments where you really don't want to take a big push, right? Like all of that stuff is stuff that Joe can help. Joe can help Mason Graham with right away. And if Mason wants to take that, and if Joe wants to give that, I think that'd be a great pairing. Myles Garrett, Jim Schwartz in general, and Jason Tarver, I think are going to be really good if one of these quarterbacks utilizes their resources. Because, and the reason I say this is more in tune with somebody like Shedeur than it is Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel does not have an issue being sacked in college. He's done a good job of avoiding that. Part of that is because of how he likes to play the quarterback position, which is very timid, but he does not have that issue, right? If anything, he needs to work with Denzel Ward to understand when he needs to be more aggressive. Shedeur, on the other hand, that's the big thing. He needs to work on how to make himself less of a easy target for a guy like Myles Garrett, for a guy like Mason Graham, for a guy like Mike Hall, how to make his life easier, or how to make the life easier of a guy like Joe Thomas, right, a left tackle. These are all things that he can stand to learn how to do a lot better. The one thing with Shedeur that I've been harping on is his pocket discipline is not great. And I think a lot of people have harped on this. And quite frankly, so many people have hopped on this and like have over exaggerated it to a point to where it's kind of overrated, but it's still something that's there, right? Like, I don't think the pocket mechanics were enough to justify Shedeur falling to the 5th round, given what the rest of his tape looked like. I still thought, even with those flaws, he was a first-round pick. But nonetheless, Shedeur does need to fix that part of his game. I talked about in one of my videos earlier the importance of staying ahead of the sticks. This was a big concern I had with Jalen Milroe. It's a big concern I have with Shador Sanders. It was a big concern I had with Cam Ward and pretty much every quarterback in this draft class. Can you stay ahead of the sticks? Now, Dillon Gabriel, for his credit, if you get him ahead of the sticks, how he plays quarterback will bug you a lot less, right? Because he's not going to be aggressive, take a shot downfield guy. He's going to be pretty timid. He's going to take a lot of checkdowns, but if you're ahead of the sticks, taking checkdowns not a big bet, not a bad idea, right? So Dylan Gabriel not going to get you behind the sticks. If he gets ahead of the sticks, he knows how to play with the sticks, right? But with Shedeur, who he also does know how to play with the sticks, especially when he's ahead of the sticks. And I think in college, he did a much better job of balancing when to be aggressive and when to be conservative on taking what's in front of him, especially by having the confidence to make high-level throws at the college level. What he needs to learn is how to stay ahead of the sticks. You know, you get 5 yards on first down, you take a sack on second down, and you at third and 14, you blew up the whole offense. And if you consistently do that, your offense is going to suck. One of the things that Deshaun constantly did that derailed the offense was get behind the sticks, taking sacks. That was a big problem for the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun, and honestly a problem for Deshaun throughout his whole career. And if you want to point to one of the things that have always kind of held him back win-loss wise, it's been his inability to stay ahead of the sticks, which kind of relies on him having to make bigger and bigger plays. You don't want that to be the case. Make football easy. Stay ahead of the sticks. How do you do that? Well, Shedeur has to get better at pocket discipline. How's he going to learn that, right? Is Joe Flacco going to teach him everything he needs to know about pocket discipline? Maybe. I think Joe will give you like a little tidbit here and there, if he sees you struggling with something that he feels like he can help you out with. But I don't think Joe Flacco is going to put on the mentor ball cap, be a big brother to Shedeur, and watch tape with him and go out his way to mentor him, right? If Joe has something to offer, Joe will offer it up. But Joe's not going to go out his way to coach up the kid, right? Like, that's not how Joe Flacco has, quite frankly, ever operated. Now, he's not a complete douche like some people like to make him out to be, but he's not going to go out his way, right? Like, he'll offer up something if he sees you struggling. So probably not going to be Joe. But Miles knows the importance of getting a quarterback on this team that can help this team be successful. Miles has been stressed out about this. So I bet, if Shedeur shows any promise during OTAs and rookie camp, Miles is going to be more than willing to be like, hey, yeah, I'll help you get better at that. Because Miles understands this offense needs to be better in order for him to be impactful. Because let's be real, he was a good offense away from being a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. But because the Browns' offense was awful, they didn't win very many games. Because the Browns didn't win very many games, he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year. Miles understands the importance of what's going on the offensive side of the ball. And Miles probably looks at Shedeur and go, okay, you need to change this. You can't do this and expect that to ride. Like, I look at that as an edge and go, okay, I'm going to get 4 sacks this game. Like, you're going to make my life real easy. And giving Shedeur that game and it coming from Myles Garrett, right? And again, this is somebody whose father is Deion Sanders, right? So he probably has learned a bit about what tells quarterbacks give defensive backs that can, lead to more interceptions. And to Shedeur's credit, he has not thrown a ton of interceptions in his college career. Even a year where, you can point to that he struggled the most. The team didn't win his first year at Colorado, only threw 4 interceptions. So you can see him benefiting from that kind of relationship with the relationship that he had with his father, who's one of the greatest defensive backs of all time. Well, Myles Garrett's one of the best edge rushers of his era. And I think that clout that Myles has for being Myles Garrett is going to carry a lot of weight with somebody like Shador Sanders. And if it's Zadarius Smith telling you need to change this, you might not listen, right? If you Shador. But if it's Myles Garrett and he's like, hey, man, you are food because you keep doing this to me. And then Myles Garrett is talented enough to where he can on command demonstrate this to him, in practice, keep tagging him, right? The point to get across. That's what Shedeur needs to change the most. He has resources in front of him, uniquely good resources, to be able to adjust that. That's what I want to talk about, right? We always talk about the resources in the room. When Mason Graham gets drafted, how's Miles going to help him get better? And that's part of it, right? when the Browns draft Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur, the onus gets put on the veterans in the quarterback room to mentor him. And that's a part of it. But another thing that's going to help these guys are the people who understand on an elite level how to attack your weakness. Joe Bitonio is going to understand at an elite level how to attack Mason Graham's weakness, and he's going to give that information to Mason Graham, or at least you would hope. You know, Myles Garrett is going to understand how to attack the weakness that Shedeur has with poor pocket discipline and be able to demonstrate at a very high level that this is going to have to change in order for you to be successful. He has the clout to be able to make that point stick home, right? If Myles Garrett is saying your food, you need to do something about that, right? And that can be something that can help Shedeur kind of fix this big flaw that everybody points out in his film, which is poor pocket discipline. Again, it's not as bad as some people make it out to be. Again, people make it out to be like he should have been a 6th-round pick because his pocket discipline is that bad. And I'm like, brother, like, Tyler Shuck's pocket discipline is just as bad, right? I think Cam Ward's pocket discipline is similarly as bad. So I don't want to make it out to be like Shedeur can't handle being in the pocket. I think he handles the pocket a lot better than other guys. Like Jackson Dart went ahead of him. I think Shedeur handles the pocket better than Jackson Dart, right? The only guys who are more disciplined than him is, like, ironically enough, Jalen Milroe, who sometimes can be too disciplined in the pocket. That leads to sacks for him. But anyways, Shedeur needs to be more disciplined in the pocket, regardless of how far you're going to take it with that flaw. He needs to be more disciplined in the pocket. Somebody like Myles can really help him not only understand what he can and cannot get away with in the NFL, but also understand exactly how to avoid being food for a defensive end like him. Because, like it or not, you're going to have to play. Look, Myles Garrett is at the top of his class, but that is a class that exists of like 7 edge rushers in the NFL who are similarly as good as Myles Garrett. So it's just because that dude's on your team don't mean you dodged the bullet. You know? So that's my thoughts about that. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.